Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 418.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you're here today because here's what I know. I know that as you go and grow through your journey as a CEO, yes, I'm calling you a CEO already. Don't you love that? I know I do. Anyway, as you go and grow through this journey, we have many challenges to face. In fact, some of those challenges we didn't even ask for, in the sense that we didn't want them, but we wanted the end result. I know for me, learning to be a better leader is a constant challenge, simply because I never thought that these would be the things that were necessary to grow any business, but let alone mine. And I have with me today someone who's going to, help you and I. In fact, she's going to help us lead through the turn. In fact, Leading Through the Turn is the title of her book, How a Journey Mindset Can Help Leaders Find Success and Significance. And she's none other than Elise Mitchell. Now, you may know her because, she's a CEO not once but twice of Mitchell Communications Group, as well as Dentsu Aegis Publishing Relations Network. Now, what's really, really interesting to me is that not only did she start from scratch, but she also found a way to create a life, a journey that you and I believe will learn a lot from. Because if you go over to her website, she calls herself an author, an entrepreneur, CEO, wife, mom, and biker. We're definitely going to find out about the biker part. So grab those pens and paper. Let's make sure that we take some notes and listen to Elise Mitchell. Elise, you there?
I am here. Hi, Jay.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing? Thank you for having me.
I'm good so far. Now, this being your first time here, I have to ask you the same question I tend to ask everybody the first time that they're here. Are you ready?
I am.
All right.
What you got?
So I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes. You know, like Spider-Man, Wonder Woman, Batman, etc. And I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. Occasionally, as an entrepreneur, we can envision ourselves possibly in a cape and tight, but flying around, using our products and services, and helping our customers in various forms. Now, also, like a superhero, an entrepreneur has a beginning. So if you think about, Spider-Man, for example, there was a time where he was just a regular kid, going to school, getting good grades, trying to take some photos to make sure he had some lunch money. And then one day he gets bit by a spider and finds out that he's got a new special superhuman ability, and he gets to choose to use it for good or evil. So, my question to you is as follows. Before your work with major brands like Walmart, Kraft, Hilton, etc., before, your companies, before all the things, before the book even, before everything that people know you for today, who is Elise Mitchell?
Oh, gosh, what a great question. I was afraid you were asking me what superhero I was. And I thought, I probably would describe myself as underdog, although, but,
awesome.
I aspired to be Wonder Woman, but, we all aspire to be that. What we are is another question. I don't know. It's a great question. I would say this, Jay. I think I was always an entrepreneur at heart. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, when they think about themselves in the way back into the beginning of their earliest days, they might say the same thing. I I remember I used to organize Monopoly tournaments in my neighborhood every summer. I set up a gift wrapping business in my parents' basement when I was a kid to make money to buy Christmas presents, for friends and family. So I was from a very early age, I was interested in trying to build things and create things from scratch and organize them. And I found that I was very good at it. So I, of course, had no idea I was actually going to become one in my adult life. But I think I had that passion and that drive and that sort of enterprising spirit very early on.
Interesting. Now, I just want to make sure I heard that correctly. Did you say a gift wrapping business?
Yeah, yes, I know. Well, it's crazy. So I set up a card table in my parents' basement. I grew up in a small town in Illinois, and every house had basements. Most people, they were like, I think, dens and comfortable places, but ours kind of had the water that was kind of running down the wall, and I had to practice piano in my parents' basement all the time. But I set up a card table there and gift wrapping, and I went around door to door to say, if you need help gift wrapping, I can do it for you. It's like a nickel a present. I don't remember. I probably should have charged more. But all that to say, it turned out great. And I made money doing it. And my brothers and my parents all took advantage of it too. So it was a lot of fun. And I was very creative. So I thought gift wrapping was actually kind of a fun thing to do. But I made money. And that's the important thing. I took my passion and my drive, and I figured out a way to make money. And I guess that's just the essence of the entrepreneurial spirit right there.
No one has ever said gift wrapping. I've heard lots of newspapers and lawnmowers and, selling candy. I just wanted to make sure I heard that correctly.
Yeah.
Because gift wrapping is so not a skill anyone would ever pay me for.
But that's exactly why I did it, because I could do it and I could make money because nobody else wanted to do it.
Got it. I get it. Okay, so from the beginning, you were out there trying to organize resources to make them happen.
Yeah.
So how do we go from gift wrapping to communications and public relations?
Yeah.
There's definitely a story there.
Well, I guess there might be. So, like a lot of people, you find what you're good at in life and that you're passionate about. And I do think actually passion, Jay, is one of those ingredients that you just have to have. No matter what you are going to do in your entrepreneurial life, you need to be passionate about it and be good at articulating that passion and that vision to others. But when I decided to start my agency, Mitchell Communications Group, I'd been practicing public relations for about 13 years. So I wasn't just a beginner. I had been in corporate life. I had worked at 2 different agencies before I started my own. And it really gave me a sense of, I think, really good perspective about the business. So I had a chance to be a client before I ever had an agency that tried to win clients. And that was always valuable. So when my husband and I moved from Memphis, Tennessee at the time where we were living, to Northwest Arkansas, which is where I started my firm. It was a very interesting detour for me because I had always envisioned that we would live and work in a big city like Atlanta or Chicago or just some great American city. And that wasn't what happened. And so I faced a very early challenge in my entrepreneurial experience, which was, how do you start a business in a pretty small market when you have hopes and dreams of building something world class? So that was the first big obstacle that I faced, which I think a lot of entrepreneurs face. They're maybe not exactly where they want to be when they have a dream and a desire to build a business. So you're, from the very get-go, you learn early you're going to have obstacles you have to overcome.
Indeed. And obstacles are definitely a part of the journey. But what I just want to make sure I heard something correctly, because what I heard is, before you had your own, it sounded like you were a customer of an agency first?
Mm-hmm. Yes, okay. I was.
Is that did that help you in some way to figure out, like, hey, before you go, hey, I can do this better, figure out what's out there first?
Always. And, walking in our customers' shoes is something that you cannot do enough of, no matter how long you've been in business. You sort of, I think, can fall into a trap of getting kind of smug, like, hey, I understand my customers. I know what it's like to be a customer. But do you really? I think it's really smart to take out periodically time to sit down and touch base with your customers. Go sit and have coffee with them, ask them, do survey. I mean, there's so many ways you can find out what is their pain point, and in all honesty, how are you doing? Are you serving their needs or not? And more importantly, are their needs changing? That's one of the earliest ways to get kind of an early read about your market evolving, is when they start saying, well, my needs are different now, and I'm not sure you're meeting them, or I'm not sure if you can meet them. And that's always okay, I need to get a half a step ahead of the market here, and I need to evolve, and I need to innovate, and I need to figure out how to stay up with what my customers really need. And one of the fundamental ways to do that is by talking to them and figure out what's going on with them.
You mean like with an actual phone?
or better yet, looking them straight in the eye and reading their body language in their face. Do they say, well, and kind of turn their head to the side and say, that's body language tells you maybe there's something underlying here that I need to dig into, that maybe they don't have the courage to tell me, that things aren't exactly right. And that's when you as a leader have to dig in, press into that opportunity to learn and to grow.
Yeah. I was just thinking, my customers don't always speak in emojis, so you're probably right about that one there.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned the idea that you said you were working for others for about 13 years or so before you did your own, which brings up the question, 'cause for a number of people that are listening and otherwise, they're working for others right now. They want to have their own thing. They have what they believe to be a solid idea. How did you develop the courage to actually do that?
Well, it's a good question. I remember actually very specifically what happened. It was a life-changing event. My husband and I deciding to move, and I had what I considered to be a great job. Was in corporate life. And at the time, I thought, I'm not sure I'll ever do any better than this. Which, of course, wasn't true. But I thought at the time, wow, I have such a wonderful job. I don't necessarily want to leave it, but we have to. And so, believe it or not, I sat to tell my boss I was leaving. Bad news is I'm leaving. The good news is I'm starting my own agency, and I want you to be my first client. And I slid a proposal across the desk to him. So I kind of caught him off guard, and I thought, either he's going to be, stand up and applaud, or he's going to cry, or he's going to say, are you crazy? But he said, let me think about it. And Jay, he came back the next day. I mean, he only took 24 hours. And he said, yes, we'll hire you because we need you. We want your input. You've done a great job for us here. And we don't really care where you are, because I was moving at that time about 6 hours away. He said, it's okay. He said, you can work from wherever you are, but we need your perspective and your expertise. And I thought, you know what, had I not had the courage to make the ask, I wouldn't have gotten my business started. So I think the lesson for entrepreneurs is, don't be afraid to have some courage and make the first ask, because that's literally how you open your doors, is to get that first customer.
But that's what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Is we know that intellectually, but where do you get that ability to actually get those? In your case, you went a whole new level, but many are just trying to get the courage to do it to anyone, let alone the one that they're currently employed by.
Well, that's true. I get that.
That's a whole different story. But that courage is what I'm talking about. Where does that come from? Because again, like I said, Spider-Man's superhero moment, it's clear. He got bit by a spider. It was an obvious defining moment. It usually is. And we can see where that point is for him. But what I'm trying to understand is where is that point for you? Like, what led up to, okay, I'm gonna make this happen. I'm going to do that. I'm going to share a story that might be hopes helpful to people that are listening. I remember a time, actually this happened later in my career, but I remember a time I was working with an executive coach at the time, and I was trying to get him to help me sort of press into some future ideas. And he taught me a very simple exercise, which was, imagine yourself, you are in scenario A. Your current state is scenario A. What's good and bad about that? What do you like? What do you want to be different? And is there anything you can do to change that scenario to make it better? And then he walked me through what is scenario B and what is scenario C. And he only took me sort of through these three different scenarios. And each time it was, what would you tweak and do different if you were living in that current state? And it actually freed my mind to begin thinking about, well, you mean there's things I could do right now that would make my situation better, where I wouldn't feel like I had to go to scenario B or C.
And then actually the third one, the last scenario was if you could do anything, that sort of that blue sky. And wow, Jay, that was so powerful because I remember thinking to myself, well, if I could really do anything, which of course we never give ourselves permission to really do anything, but if you could, what would you do? And that I think is maybe a pivotal point in people's minds where they could see themselves becoming an entrepreneur or leaving a current situation to do something else, or maybe more importantly, what is it going to take to get me to what's that transition period that I need to start going through in order to get to that desired state? And there may be things you have to do before you can actually take that leap.
Yes. Now, you said something that I think was key that I want to drill into is you mentioned the word transition. I liken it to more of a transformation because the person that you are in your scenario A typically can't be the same even for scenario B and definitely not the same for scenario C. So what was that transformation like for you? Was it smooth sailing from the beginning or was it some rocky road?
I would say it's always rocky. And I'm probably like most entrepreneurs in that you tend to be your own worst critic. We put more.
Hold on. So I know you were washing dishes. You're on the treadmill. Say that again because they need to hear that one.
We are our own worst critic, and I am guilty of doing it same way as I think many others. Is we put limits on ourselves that nobody else does, and I do think that other people often see us as superheroes. We don't see ourselves that way.
Nope.
And so I will tell you that in my experience, the internal battle is the hardest one. And you have to tackle that internal battle. You have to be able to find internal drive, tenacity, passion, determination, a willingness to push yourself out of your comfort zone and to step into uncharted territory. I mean, this is kind of like in my book, this idea of you've got to be willing to be an explorer and go on the journey of life. You cannot just stay where you are always. I mean, it may be, in the current job or in the current industry that you're in, yes, but you have to be willing to grow and evolve in that space. And that takes courage. We would much rather stay in our comfort zone and be good at what we do and never really get out of it. But I'm telling you, in my experience for me, I have grown the most and had the most success when I pushed myself out of my comfort zone into a state of uncertainty. And I was willing to risk failure, to risk embarrassment or fear of looking foolish, to other people. Because in my heart, I thought, I know I have the ability to do something. I don't know exactly the way forward, but I'm going to try to figure it out. And then getting in the game and really trying to play.
Oh, you just nailed it right there. Because here's the thing, that state of uncertainty, well, because it's uncertain, many of us are afraid to go that one extra step. But at the same time, there's this thing in the back of all of our minds from time to time to where that state of uncertainty is something that we are rushing to get rid of. And we say things or we do things like, oh, once I get to, my first $1 million of revenue or $2 million or $10 million of revenue, then everything's going to be great. And suddenly things are going to be more certain. So I think you're going to be in a unique position to answer this question. Have things gotten more certain? I try not to laugh when I said that. I really tried.
Well, I will laugh for you. That's so funny. I love the idea because I remember being in that very place, which is, if only, I can get to this point or if I can solve this problem. And you sort of live in this perpetual fantasy that life is going to become simple, that you're going to know everything. And I'm telling you, in my 20 plus years of entrepreneurship and leadership, I have yet to find that place. And maybe I'm slow. And I should be there. But in all honesty, I don't think it exists. I think you learn to live in the tension of uncertainty. And this is actually, I think, a sign of maturity as a leader is when you recognize it is not ever going to be completely clear to me. And I'm okay with that. And the part of that is we're propelled by this fear of not having all the answers. And I remember distinctly when we went through a period of sustained growth. We grew over 500% in 5 years. And
Wow.
it was never more fun, and I've been never so scared in my life to lead during that chaos, because you know what, Jay, most of the time I didn't have the answers. I did not know what to do next. But here's where you take the comfort. You tell yourself, yeah, but I'm smart and I'm tenacious and I have good people around me, and we will figure it out as we go. And nobody has all the answers. And when you sort of come to that place, you get a little confidence, like, okay, bring it on. We'll figure it out. Whatever comes, somehow we'll find a way forward.
Elise, as I'm listening to you, I'm sitting here thinking you could even go so far as to say that if you do know all the answers, you're probably not growing.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's exactly right. Because then guess what? You're in your comfort zone. And you haven't become what one of the things I have really come to ascribe to is this idea of being a learning leader, that you will never know it all, and you can't and you shouldn't, and you should always want to know more. And when you role model that for people around you, you also give them permission to be learners. And I think that's definitely how we stay up with this rapidly changing business environment we're all trying to figure out how to win in. I mean, every time you wake up, the game has changed. The technology, disruption, it's all going to be there. So even though you feel good about your business today, it could all change tomorrow. And you need to be just a perpetual learner, which is, okay, game has changed, let's figure it out. And it actually kind of becomes the fun of being an entrepreneur.
What's funny is when you said, when you wake up in the morning, the game is changed. And I'm like, no, it's usually between breakfast and lunch. It's a little bit faster than that. But yes.
How true. You are so right. It has only sped up, which again, sort of is then what do we do about it? Because you can't know all the answers. And just when you think you do, the challenges will change and you'll face different obstacles, and you have to be an overcomer. You have to be somebody who's willing to face it and go forward, and then realize that's kind of what brings some joy in the journey.
Well, what we're talking about here has a lot to do with, and when you say change, I start thinking about the title of your book, Leading Through the Turn. Roads are not always straight. Business does not always go one direction. And in fact, when there is a curve in the road, it's not bad that there's a curve in the road, unless you fail to kind of turn with it. Then it becomes a problem really, really fast. So I'm curious, what was the inspiration, A, for the title, and then B, for writing the book in the first place? Hey guys, thanks for listening as always, and I'm glad that you continue to support with each and every download and subscription and share. One of the things that I want to ask you though is, where are you listening to me from right now? I know some of you, maybe you're on a treadmill, maybe you're washing dishes, maybe you're walking that dog, and some of you are actually in a vehicle driving right now. One of the fun things that you can do, get some of your time back, is begin to living a car-free existence. But even then, it can be a little complicated. So one of the things that I want you to do is I want you to go over to Zipcar. Go to joinzipcar.com/cashflow diary. It's a way that I am able to still go get a car just for a few hours, very, very simply, so that if I have a lot of errands to run and sheets to drop off and running to the short-term rentals, or if I just want to go for a long trip up to LA and back, etc., I can rent a car for a very, very short period of time. And the cool part is I don't even have to pay for any gas. Again, go to joinzipcar.com/cashflow diary.
Well, it's exactly what you said. The approach of the turn is everything. So I learned to ride a motorcycle about 10 years ago when, to be honest with you, all I thought about was winning at work. It was when our business was rapidly growing, and on the outside, everything looked great for me. I had a company that was succeeding. We were still in business. Things were going well. Had a wonderful family. But you know what? On the inside, I was kind of dying because I was so focused on the business that I wasn't living the rest of my life. And again, very common problem for entrepreneurs. And I had to do something about it, because you can do that for a while, but you can't do it for years on end, which was kind of where I was. So my husband and I looked at each other one time and we said, we haven't been on a vacation in so long, building 2 careers, raising kids, we need to get away. And so in a moment of insanity, I agreed to get on the back of his motorcycle and take a 10-day trip. And I kept thinking, this is going to be so uncomfortable. It's going to be miserable. I'm not even with the handlebars in my hand, I'm on the back. But I will tell you what, Jay, I got on the back of his bike and I never looked back. It was the most exciting, intoxicating, just rewarding and thrilling way to travel. I mean, the sights, the sounds, the smells, it was just fantastic. And most importantly, in that 10 days, you know what I came to realize was I don't ever do anything like this. I never have fun. I never take the time. I could, but I didn't take the time to enjoy life. And not to mention just spending time with my family, my husband. And I knew that needed to change. And when we came back, he said, Elise, you need to learn to ride a bike. And I did. I took the motorcycle safety course. And in the course, on the Friday night, the classroom section of the course, our instructor, Big Mike, he had on leather vest and tattoos on his arms and all that. And he said, I'm going to teach you something you need to know that will save your life. And of course, we all leaned in. What's that? And he said, there's a fundamental principle of motorcycling called looking through the turn. And he said, as you approach a turn, you have to look into the turn to see what hazards might be there. Potholes, oil slicks, gravel, things like that. Things that will make your bike slide and crash. And he said, but you don't stare straight at them. Instead, you keep your eyes focused on where you want to end up, which is the other side of the turn. And he said, it's called looking through the turn because your bike will follow your eyes. So anybody who rides a bicycle will get this same principle. And I remember just being so struck. I thought, this is the most powerful metaphor for business and life I've ever heard. And I want to be that kind of leader and wife and mom, and friend. I want to be somebody who is not so focused on everything that's right in front of them and all the things that could go wrong. And instead to keep my eyes focused on where I want to end up. And so it really became my mantra and inspired the title of the book, Leading Through the Turn. How can I be a leader who's leading through the turn? And it was really became a lot of the inspiration for the last 10 years or so of my life.
Got it. And that makes perfect sense. I just want to make sure it was clear. You said a moment of insanity?
What we do, right? What we do. But it was just as most of those types of moments are, it was a gift. And it was an awakening for me. And I back to the point of get out of your comfort zone. There are things you can do that could change your life. And you don't even know the potential that could wait on the other side unless you're willing to try some different things, whether it's personally or professionally in your life. Try something new. See how it changes you.
Yeah. I was thinking if my wife came to me, what would that moment of insanity look like? And it would have to do with, I have the most specific palate on the planet. I'm not adventurous when it comes to food at all. And she's so the opposite. So I think it would be 10 days of her deciding what I would eat would be almost the equivalent in this particular case, because I'm trying to understand how he convinced you to do 10 days motorcycle. It'll be great.
I know. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? But you know what, Jay, I'm so glad I went.
Yeah,
so
I get
your
that.
world opens up to you. I can imagine you eating Vietnamese food one night.
Oh, boy.
Latin food. Oh, gosh, I'd love to plan the menu for you for 10 days. I bet your wife would.
Yeah, she would totally enjoy that process.
That's right.
I can feel, just when you mentioned it, anxiety pops up. I'm just like,
Which is the sign you will probably got to try it.
Yes. And then somebody's going to write to her now and tell her that. But that's okay. Now, there's this one thing that she said that I want to drill down on, because I think many would-be entrepreneurs and existing ones that are listening need to hear that part again, because you said you never have any fun. And I know I'm definitely not the poster child for a party. No one ever calls me because, hey, Jay's the party guy, or ever, that's not like the thing. But let's talk about that. Why do you think it is, as entrepreneurs, that can be a challenge for us, this fun category?
I'm so glad you asked this question. To me, this is actually one of the most important lessons. When I speak, I always share this one, no matter what other lessons I'm sharing and teaching about leadership, I always include this one. And it's the lesson I simply call it is enjoy the ride, which is, we're not meant to work all the time. You have to find the off switch at some point. If for no other reason than the people that you love in your life, whether it's family or friends, community, church, whatever it is, the people you care the most about, they don't want to solely and only know you as you defined by your work. And for entrepreneurs, often that's a challenge because our identity is tied up in our company. I know it was for me for many years. I couldn't imagine myself outside of my business. And I thought, well, people, they see me, they respect me, and they know me because I've built this company. And what you've done is you just shortchanged the person, the you that inside of that is you're not your company. You're not your business. You're separate and apart from that. And no matter if you may not be able to hear and believe that now if you're a listener, because believe me, I was there for many years. I could not imagine myself without my company. But I still, I'm part of my company. I'm still the CEO of my company, even though I sold it. But you have to be able to see yourself as a whole person and press into those things. And I'll tell you, my children were, besides my husband, my children were kind of what persuaded me otherwise. They were reaching teenagehood. And, the myth of parenting is when they're little, you think, well, they'll need me less and my time will free up more as they grow up.
Sorry.
Opposite, right? Now,
Yeah.
wrong is that. They need you more. They need you in different ways. And
Right.
I always thought I want to be on that front row when my kid's playing ball or, at my daughter's dance recital, whatever it is. I want the full brownie point. I don't want to be that parent that's out in the hall on the phone the whole time. I want to be present and in the moment for them so that they will feel, a bond with me. I was there for them. And to me, that's a more powerful accomplishment in life, being a mom's best job I ever had. And I want to be a success at it, which means you have to invest the time into other people that mean the most to you and build those relationships. They don't just happen. In fact, they'll fade if you don't.
Yeah, indeed. Now, you said something that's really not that popular right now, because I think we're going through a phase where words like hustle and grind and entrepreneur are actually kind of cool and nice. There was a time, I'm sure, where you're an entrepreneur was code for you don't have a job, go get one. But now it's actually in vogue. But you said the words off switch, which is kind of like, what did she just say? Are you crazy? How is that possible? Because if I take time off, then that means I'm not committed.
Right. Well, and this is kind of the underlying message of my whole book, which is you can work really hard at your business and ambition is good, but it cannot be all you're about. You have to live a full life and you have to be a whole person because it's not sustainable otherwise. I went through years and years and years of really pressing into my business and it did pay off. And I'll be honest about that. Hard work absolutely has its place and you need to be driven and you need to be tenacious. But you cannot shortchange your personal health, your family relationships, your spiritual health, whatever it is that it sort of makes up the whole you, your personal interests and hobbies. If those things kind of die inside of you, then in the end, what are you going to do? Wake up and say, oh yeah, I built this great company, but I don't have any friends, I don't have any family, I lost my health. Then we would all say, oh my gosh, well, it wasn't worth it. And so I think the question you really have to be honest and ask yourself is, where's that blending? Because it's never a balance. There's no such thing as work-life balance. But how do I blend the two to feed the different parts of me? Because you know what? If you don't invest in yourself, there will be nothing left for anyone else. And then you kind of defeat yourself because you burned out.
Yeah. Totally. And I bet you there's a person or two who's like, if they were in church right now, they'd be like, amen, sister, preach on.
And I was not the best. It took me a while to really embrace that lesson. But I guess I speak in hindsight to say, please don't do what I did. Take care of yourself and those you love along the way. You can have both. They're not exclusive. You can have full life and still have a very successful entrepreneurial venture.
Indeed. Now, I know there's a number of people who are listening and probably genuinely excited to know more because they can hear the passion in your voice that you have. And I'm sure that passion is on every page of your book. So what's going to be the best way for them to connect with you, to find out more about what you have going on, and maybe even pick up a copy of your book?
Thank you, Jay. All they got to do is one thing. Just go to my website, elisemitchell.com. It's ELISEMITCHELL.com. You can get the book there. I do a lot of speaking if anybody's interested in that. I would love to invite people to join and subscribe to we have a very active blog, and about every 2 weeks or so. So it's not too much. I think it's just about right. But I really try to provide some in the trenches leadership advice, things that I'm learning every day now, highlights from the book. I feature other leaders. So just try to build a community of people who want to really lead at their best.
Got it. Now, as we wind down, I got one more question for you because I'm kind of curious to hear what you would say with your newfound perspective. So let's pretend for a moment that there's someone listening who, they're standing in front of the superhero outfit store. They think, you know what, I'm going to do this entrepreneurship thing. Elise can do it. I've been working here for 13 years. I can make this thing happen. However, you and I both know, Elise, that there's a constant companion, and it takes the form of a voice. And for whatever reason, anytime we make these decisions of how we're going to be better, do more, etc., that voice is right there to remind us of things like, who are you to think you are going to do this? I mean, you're in the middle of nowhere. No one's going to pick up your product or use your service. There's so many things that this voice tells us. And for some people, they're related to that voice. So my question to you is as follows. Let's pretend for a moment that this time they're actually going to do what you suggest, and they're going to do it in 24 to 48 hours from now. So, what would you suggest that they do?
Oh boy, that's it. Actually, it's a wonderful question, because I do think there are some real fundamentals of starting that entrepreneurial journey. Like I mentioned before, I think passion is absolutely key, but it's also a couple of things like, you need to have some good business acumen. Get committed to understanding how to make money. How revenue and expenses, and how do those two relate to each other? How can you build a business model that is efficient, that continue to grow over time? How do you surround yourself with people who are good at what you're not? That was probably one of the best leadership lessons I ever learned from the very beginning, how to hire people or even just consultants that complement you and help make you smarter so you could run your business well. I think overcome your fear of failure. That was a big one for me. It kind of haunted me for many years as I thought, oh my gosh, what if the business fails? Well, what if the business fails? You walk yourself through those questions. Well, then you pick yourself up and you try something different and you learn from it and you become wiser, and you're probably going to have a better chance to succeed next time. So you kind of talk yourself through. And I do think the head trash voice is the one that we all have to silence whenever we can. It's okay to listen to it on occasion, but when you're going to make a big decision like this, sit down and write out on a piece of paper some of the fundamentals of how you want to run and build a business. What do you think you need to help and support you, whether it's people or resources? How are you going to go make those things happen? How do you give yourself permission to fail and to learn as you go? How do you know that you're going to make money and you're going to do everything you can to understand the fundamentals of finance? And how do you remain passionate and committed to that vision? Because if you really believe that you have an ability to make a go of it, give yourself a little bit of runway and go for it. And try it and see if you can't figure it out as you go. It may not be an overnight success. For most of us, I was a 20-year overnight success. It took a while, and that's okay, because I had a lot of ups and downs. But I never gave up, because I felt like we were on to something, and we had people who were willing to pay us money for what we did, and that's really the bottom line. People pay you money for what you're good at and what you can. Then give it a go and learn as you go, and chances are you'll succeed over time.
Awesome. Well said. Well, I definitely appreciate you taking the time to be here today for sharing your knowledge, your insight, and even your biker knowledge here with us today at the Cashflow Diary.
Thank you, Jay. This was so amazing for me, and I appreciate the chance to talk with your listeners and look forward to connecting with them. We can be fellow journeyers. We have a lot we can learn from each other, so I hope for that. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? That means get over to EliseMitchell.com, because one, she rides a bike and that's just cool, but it's also because she's an author, entrepreneur, CEO, wife, mom. She's got it going on, and you want to learn more of what you just heard. Ladies and gentlemen, remember this. You need to learn to fail fast, fail forward, fail frequently. And it's been fun talking to you today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.